Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Ask the Expert session. My name is Lily Slavin, and I am one of the Charge Syndrome Foundation board members. I will start by reviewing the accessibility features of our webinar. Our ASL interpreters will be spotlighted throughout the webinar, as will our presenters. If you need closed captioning, please click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Ask the Expert is a series hosted by the Charge Syndrome Foundation about once a month, in which we bring in experts in the field to talk to us about their areas of expertise. This month, we are hosting a 3-part series on interveners in collaboration with the National Center on Deafblindness. Tonight, we will spend some time with Christy Props, Suzanne Chen, and Jen Chow, talking about educational accommodations and modifications for students who are deafblind. The presenters will begin with a presentation, and the remaining time will be spent on a question and answer session. Please put your questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation. Tonight's session will be recorded and will be made available on the Charge Syndrome Foundation website. Links to resources discussed will be shared in the chat box as well. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our presentation. My name is Christy Probst, and I work for the National Center on Deafblindness as the initiative lead for interveners and qualified personnel.
I am Jen Chow. I am parent of Andrew Chow, who is a charger with deafblindness.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Chen. I am a parent of a 16-year-old son, Parker, with Charge Syndrome. I also work at the New York Deafblind Collaborative, and I'm the New York liaison for the Charge Foundation.
So this is part 2 of a 3-part series, like Lily said. You can find the link to the first webinar on the Charge Syndrome Foundation website. We want to acknowledge that this presentation and this set of presentations is not only for Charge families, but also for families who have children who are deafblind, state deafblind projects, parent centers, and others. We also want to acknowledge that our parents who are presenting with me are parents of young men who are 15 and 16 years old. This has given these moms 15 to 16 solid years to learn what they're talking about. They have also had the capacity, resources, and strong supports that they have needed over the years. And not all families have that same situation. We realize that as family members, you may not identify your child as deafblind, but rather by their etiology, such as Charge or Usher syndrome. You may also use the term deaf plus or another identifier, but you are here because your child does have combined vision and hearing loss. So you're all familiar with special education, the term, I'm sure. And I wanted to start off by just talking a little bit about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The IDEA exists to protect the rights of all individuals with disabilities and their families. IDEA defines special education as specially designed instruction. And what do they mean by that? Well, the law says this: specially designed instruction means adapting as appropriate to the needs of an eligible child under this part, the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of the child that result from the child's disability, and to ensure access of the child to the general curriculum, so that the child can meet the educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all children. Okay, so what does all of that mean to you? It means that the special educators and the IEP team are expected to adapt the content, techniques, and instructional delivery to meet the individual needs of your child.
So our special educators, they want to do the right things for our kids, and they think they are, right? In the event that your team might not seem to be doing the right things for your child, here are a few points as a checklist that you can compare against. 1, the education team must have the right mindset to meet your kiddos where they are. 2, they should have the ability to adapt that curriculum to reach and challenge your child appropriately. 3, they should have a working knowledge that teaching our kiddos and understanding how they learn is different from most in their classroom, and that it is attainable and possible. 4, they should have data to show your child's progress and explain next steps in the plan. Ultimately, the team should understand that our kids likely do not fit into the typical adapted model. I have found for my son, the teacher and the team have to learn to get outside of their box and recognize what it takes to reach our deafblind kiddos. To me, this is of the utmost importance. I recently told our team, if we can't get this part right, nothing else matters, because this is the most basic foundation for which we build everything else upon. And I was recently told by the team how a certain reading program is utilized by all the kids in the EC, the Exceptional Children's Program in our county. I was told this program is designed and adaptable for all special needs kids. And I explained how Andrew is of the 1% in her classroom. He's the only deafblind kiddo. And in this example, he is not able to understand a computer automated voice reading a passage from which he will be required to answer comprehension questions. If given multiple choice, he chooses until he gets it right. This is not comprehension.
I completely agree, Jen. When Parker received his diagnosis of charge and we decided to choose the classification of deafblindness, we knew that deafblindness was such a low incidence population, meaning less common within the general population. As a parent of a teenager, it was definitely overwhelming to look for how best to support him. I felt like I won the lottery, and it was very scary, and I felt alone. There was a lack of training for educators to understand our kids, and I automatically assumed that when he was approved for a teacher of the visually impaired and hearing education services, they would know how to work with him. And boy, was I wrong. There is such a lack of programs and certifications on deafblindness and how it impacts how our children learn. Educators need to think outside the box, and sometimes it's very hard because they will revert and reference to things they've learned either in textbooks about students who are deaf, students who are visually impaired, or under the umbrella of special needs or intellectually disabled. I have to continue to educate teachers and therapists on my son's needs every year, and I update a personalized PowerPoint as his needs change. So this is my son, Parker. He just turned 16 like 2 weeks ago. And I always love putting a quote with a picture. So you will always know more about your child than experts. Sometimes what you know may confound and confuse them. That doesn't make you wrong. And this embodies this entire 3-part series. So how do I prepare for an IEP meeting? Well, first, I realized Parker needed someone to support him in the classroom when he was about in pre-K. The teacher during parent-teacher conference informed me that he didn't know WH questions and sometimes did not participate or engage in circle time in lessons. She was 6 foot tall and circle time was on the floor, so basically Parker was staring at her kneecaps. She wasn't sure if he was understanding anything, and I read up on interveners, and the teacher agreed that he needed this service. I invited the district representative at the time to observe Parker in the classroom. And mind you, interveners are not recognized in New York State. And I was advocating for a position that did not exist in the eyes of the Department of Education. During the IEP, I first took a deep breath and I told myself, we're all here for Parker. I explained his needs. I had documentation on what he needed, why he needed it, and also supporting letters from various organizations I signed him up with. And I signed him up with lots of agencies. The Commission for the Blind, a letter from the State Deafblind Project providing information on what his disability was. I also presented to the team videos and pictures of what Parker was capable of with the right supports. We are our child's first advocates and sometimes voice, and I needed to share that he was more than just a case number. He was a person that he could thrive and learn. And I was also good at reading a room. Everything flows better with coffee and snacks. Through the years, I brought coffee and pastries. I knew everyone's name. I wanted to always speak about his strengths and what he can do, not just what he can't. I brought a picture of Parker as well to reinforce that he's a person, and a cute one at that. The main takeaways I would say would be to do your research, get to know your audience, who are the key players at the meeting, build your allies and relationships, provide documents and justification, and know that your voice matters and that everyone in there is there for your child.
Love that, Suzanne. Great tips. This is Andrew. He has just turned 15 in March. You can't see in the picture, but he has a Buc-ee's hoodie sweatshirt on, and he loves Buc-ee's. So how do I prepare for Andrew during our IEP meetings? So my number one top priority is just being prepared, right? Knowing the topics, knowing who's sitting at the table, just like Suzanne said, who are our key players? But what does that really mean? I can break it down for you and exactly how I do that. Number one, I express my concerns and ensure they're well documented and recorded accurately. Number two, when I can, I document things in writing. It's always good for me to have a log to look back on and see the great progress that we have made. Three, I ask for work samples weekly, if not daily. Excuse me. This ensures we know what Andrew is working on. 4, I ask for the draft of the IEP at least 48 hours in advance and suggest edits when and where I can. 5, I have made it my good practice to have my state deafblind advocate attend my meetings with me, as she's level-headed, She knows the shoulds and the should nots. And she even keeps me on track when emotions sometimes run high. Number 6, remember to breathe. IEPs, they can seem very intimidating, especially when you're just starting out going to your IEP meetings. But the team is sitting around the table with the same goal as you, and that is to help your child get to the next level. On slide 6, I want to share a tool that I have used over the years, starting when Andrew was very young. This is a little dated, but I'm still going to share it with you. I do need to update this for Andrew's next steps. So I'm living it with you. This is what we call Andrew's passport. Sometimes you may have heard it referred to as an All About Me book. It actually looks like this. It's very small. Well, it's kind of blurry. I'm sorry. It's very easy to fit into your hand. And what you can do actually is speak to your state deafblind program, because they too may have something that's called something a little different. And they may also have a different template to contrast with this one. So I have provided Andrew's full passport for you to click on at the end, as well as a blank template that you can compare and contrast and take what you like from it. Essentially, what this is a flip book talking about Andrew from his perspective. It focuses on 3 key elements. 1, the how-tos with tips. 2, key information to assist the team in reaching, teaching, and ensuring they understand Andrew and his needs. And 3, how to set him and them up for success. Essentially, it's an intro on how to get to know Andrew. It's very basic. It's about 5 to 6 pages, and it's an easy way to orient new people to your child. You can even include a medical necessities page if that's applicable. On slide 7, one page that I always put in the front of his passport are the tips for communicating with him. Sorry that this font is a little small, but you can view it afterwards and look at the detail. So it talks about his, like, how to greet him, what his vision is, his hearing, the response time. We talked about that in the first webinar, like the wait time, the very uncomfortable silence, and then also to the medical information. And on slide 8, this is an example of, again, what, from his perspective, what happens when he's unhappy or he's uncomfortable, giving them a heads up.
Oh, Christy, you're muted.
So sorry. You may hear the terms accommodations and modifications used interchangeably. However, they are different. So let's talk about that a little bit. Both are used to help a child learn, but are different supports. Modifications are the changes to what is being taught or expected from the student. So for example, the teacher may make an assignment easier for a student who has disabilities than the assignment that is given to their peers. It meets their needs by making it a little bit easier, but they're still learning the same content. Accommodations are changes that allow the student to overcome or work around their disability. So an example of this would be a student who has difficulty writing would be allowed to give their answers orally rather than writing them out. An accommodation or modification that the IEP team determines a child requires must be specified in the IEP. You got to write it down. Modifications or accommodations are most often made to the following areas: scheduling, like providing extra time for tests or assignments; setting, this could be working in smaller groups or working one-on-one with a teacher; materials, like large print or braille books; instruction, this could be reducing the reading level and reducing the difficulty of assignments; student response, this is allowing the student to, let's say, type their answers rather than write them, or use sign language, or a communication device, or use Braille. State and district-wide assessments. A lot of times we see that there's extra time added and that they can take these assessments in a different area where it's quieter and less distractions. And then finally, wait time. We're going to continue to drill this home. Wait time is so important. So writing that into your child's IEP is key.
So these are some of the modifications and accommodations that we've done for Parker on his IEP. Most of them are stuff that Christy spoke about just now. But what works well for Parker and what we put on his IEP is that things need to be colored, contrasted, and clearly presented. Because of his central vision, presenting information with landscape works really well for him. It also states in his IEP that the intervener will be present for classroom and statewide testing. And also we added use of assistive technology, and then we listed each different technology items and devices that he uses to access instructional materials with increased independence and effectiveness. We also added that Parker needs to have breaks throughout the day to prevent visual fatigue, and it takes a lot using his only one good eye. On the left, you see a picture of Parker's science materials modified, and then on the right is what was presented for him in the classroom. You can see how he put one picture with limited images per page and the use of colors to contrast, as well as black colored pencil or thin bold marker. Also note the size of the font from the edited version from the original. In the second picture, Parker uses a program called Cami. Teachers can scan literally anything onto the program, and he has so many options to answer the questions and show work, like Christy said, in any manner he chooses. He can use the text box to type. He can use the drawing icon to write with his finger on his touchscreen laptop, and he could add and import images from the internet. The use of technology and those modifications and accommodations drastically shortened the time it took for him to complete homework, classroom assignments, and also reduced his frustration and anxiety because he wasn't able to access the work given. One piece of advice that I would share to families is to feel empowered to advocate for these accommodations and modifications, and your child is entitled to them. It is not cheating. Educators might say that their special privileges compare him to other students, but this is about meeting the needs on his IEP that was written specifically for him. I provided examples of what works for my child, and I have meetings from time to time with question and answer opportunities from teachers and providers because they are in charge for many students in the classroom, and you want to ensure that they read their IEP, and you'll be surprised how many have not.
And we need action steps. We actually take those action steps and the roles of the individuals working with Andrew to make sure that the modifications and accommodations are implemented. From our journey over the past 15 years, we now know the academic programs that are proven to work for Andrew, and we understand his preferred learning styles alongside his interpreter or intervener. These programs are very specific to him, and they are written in his IEP.
Significant modifications to content and teaching strategies are necessary for students who are deafblind. Little to no learning is being done if the child is waiting for others to take their turn. This is why small group or one-to-one instruction is critical. Children who are deafblind learn best through doing. The foundation of learning is trusting relationships. One of the ways that you build a trusting relationship is to approach a child who is deafblind from the side and touch them on their arm or leg as a first contact to let them know that you're there. Additionally, using consistent greetings to identify yourself. It may be your voice, but it also may be a personal identifier, such as a lanyard that has a fuzzy sticker on it. Another thing can be where you touch the child. Maybe every time you greet them, you touch them on their shoulder, on their left shoulder only with 2 fingers, and they know that's you. The other thing is wait for acknowledgement from the child. Allow them to turn, to reach, to connect with you. Like we keep saying, wait. Wait for the child. Join them in an activity that they enjoy and follow their lead. Let them bring you into the activity. Turn-taking games are so wonderful. And the other thing we talk about is routines. If you were at our first webinar a few weeks ago, I touched on the importance of routines. I wanted to revisit this very briefly because routines are so key to our children who are deafblind. Predictability will help your child to feel more comfortable. Anticipation can inspire your child to intentionally communicate. So building routines into all areas of their lives, school, home, community trips, church, whatever that may be, is key.
So I can add, Christy, that Parker loves a schedule. And the picture on the slide is actually his schedule for school. And I modified it with colors. So he thrives on a schedule. He needs to know what's going on. I modified the schedule in class with color. It's bold print. He knows every day what's going to happen and where he's going. We have a copy in his binder. We have one on the wall outside of his room. We have one in his classroom. And he memorized the schedule so he knows what's coming next. There is a sequence to what's going on throughout the day and also an expectation. Everything that our children experience and we experience has always been somewhat of a bumpy road. The road has not always been easy, and Parker has always experienced since birth the unexpected and plot twists, and coming and going from every direction. Our kids have never known what to expect and what's next. There have been curveballs. And to experience touch at infancy to connect with something negative like a blood draw or an IV or a surgery, pulling to go to therapy, pushing to finish an assignment, they're not in control. Routines and calendar systems and following their communication, their behavior, and their lead gives them back that control. It empowers them, and that we're also on their side. Giving them ways to self-advocate makes them more confident, and it gives them accountability, and they feel important.
So true, Suzanne. I think, we all want to know what's coming next, right? We want to know that predictability. And as Andrew has grown from where we started early on, we started using pictorial schedule. It was very basic for him, but it was very helpful. As you know, it was tactile, it was visual. He was able to pull Velcro pictures off of his schedule to show his progress throughout the day. That to him was accomplishment. He felt very good about that when he was able to take one of those off. Today, he now understands his schedule during the week, on the weekends, during vacation, and how each is different. For example, last Tuesday, he had a dentist appointment towards the end of his school day. I told him the night before, Andrew, you have a dentist appointment tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Excuse me, 3 o'clock. And he repeated. I told him, I said, Andrew, you're going to go to school on the bus tomorrow. Then Mama will pick you up early from school at 2 o'clock to go to the dentist. Then we'll be home at 4 o'clock. He confirmed. He asked, friends go to dentist at 2 o'clock too? I said, yep. All your friends are going to the dentist at 2 o'clock. And then he said, okay, tomorrow is Wednesday. Yep, you're going back to school. All friends back to school? Yep, you got it. All your friends are back at school. So we typically sequence it out for Andrew, and we do it verbally now. We do it, you know, kind of like first, second, third, and so on. And like I said, he repeats it back to us, and that tells us he understands it, and it's confirmation in his mind of what is coming that next day or next or whatever the case.
So like I said, on the last slide, significant modifications are necessary for children who are deafblind based on their vision and hearing. They have unique vision and hearing, and so those modifications need to take that into consideration. The foundation of learning is trusting relationships. Supporting children who are deafblind through the use of predictable routines and cues, like we just talked about, is also critical. And finally, before presenting any learning activity, making sure the child is ready and available to learn is key.
So Parker learns and communicates in so many ways, just like Jen's son. He needs to feel included, involved, and we incorporate things that he enjoys with learning. That increases his attention, his participation. We do a lot of turn taking and open communication and dialogue. One example of considerations in his learning is that we realized when he was younger, he loved hangman. He loved word scrambles and he loved word searches. So after a lesson, we'd have Parker take a break, play a game, and tie that into the curriculum or content to ensure understanding. We also test each other and play those games, and he ate it up, and he loved the role reversal. So in that sense, he felt seen and very understood.
We have our son's interpreter or intervener and our teacher roles and how they interact and differ from one another written in the IEP. The depiction is how the teacher provides the instruction, and the interpreter or intervener is the window to Andrew's world, giving him access to his environment and the curriculum. The two of them properly working in their designated roles reduces Andrew's frustration, the anxiety. It empowers him. He's ready to learn, and he's able then to access the curriculum.
Child-guided approaches, active learning, and shared experiences support learning for your child who is deafblind. You may get sick of me saying this, but follow the child's lead. Using their interests, preferences, like what my friends have said tonight already, hangman, knowing where they are, loving Bucky's, using those things as well as their needs for pacing will help them engage with you and the information that you're sharing with them. Remember that individuals who are deafblind do not have the same access to incidental learning as individuals who are typically developing. Actively engaging your child by using movement, action, multisensory formats, and hands-on experiences in interactions is important for supporting them in active learning. Finally, these experiences should be thoughtfully presented, as this will help them develop a gradually expanding view of the world.
So I could share some experience, Christy, with incidental learning, and then also how Parker has worked with different interveners. He's had a couple of interveners since elementary school that we've had, and we've had some good ones, we've had some not so good ones, we've had teachable moments. But I would say pay attention to your child's connection with others and listen to what they have to say and also what they don't say. Incidental learning for Parker could just be showing him a picture of what the word was, or clarifying what the information meant by giving concrete examples. With a previous intervener, she went overboard with the incidental learning. So she over-explained things, provided lengthy PowerPoints on vocabulary words for an ELA homework passage, and went off on tangents because she wanted him to know every part of the sentence. And if it didn't display in her eyes, he was not comprehending it, she would make sure that he understood it. The interactions were forced and she overcompensated a lot because she wasn't able to follow his lead. She wanted him to follow her lead. The teacher would have to reel her back in and explain what the purpose and objective of the assignment. Sometimes it was just homework, period. We always hear that coveted phrase, behavior is communication, and sometimes we have had staff come in with their own biases and expectations of what they think he's capable of and what he's not capable of. How you approach and interact with a child will deeply and directly impact their performance, and they will associate and remember for future experiences. If Parker felt overwhelmed or anxious, he started this behavior of picking his fingers. Looking at that behavior, one could say he doesn't understand what's going on, it's over his academic level, but it meant, lady, I am checking out. I'm concentrating on something else, and this situation has to stop. So once we found another intervener and created more meaningful and purposeful interactions, breaks, and hand cream, his behavior is lessened. And I want to make sure to just point out that relationships need to take time and they also need to be organic.
So important. So I can tell you a short little story just of something that I observed in the classroom. Andrew was communicating with a peer, a friend, and they were signing and speaking. And there was another adult that approached the teacher. The teacher was standing next to Andrew, and she was talking to the other adult. And I'm watching both. And Andrew was answering his friend, and the answer he gave her was yes. At the same time, the one adult asked the teacher, "Does Andrew want a candy cane?" The teacher heard yes, did not recognize that Andrew was having a conversation. Not to mention, we've been pouring into this kiddo to have him have conversations, and he was doing it. And I got to see it. Instead of him finishing his conversation, the teacher grabbed his shoulders, pivoted him 180, and said, "Here, take your candy cane." I didn't really know what to say. I was in disbelief. So I had to calm myself down. Bring it down, we tell him. I had to do that. So, hope that's meaningful. Christy?
Thanks. So a few weeks ago, excuse me, at the first webinar, I talked about the importance of the hands for individuals who are deafblind. I just wanted to review that information quickly because it's important as we talk about accommodations and modifications. Interacting with your child who is deafblind using respectful touch of their hands is super important. Since their hands often serve as their eyes and ears for them, consider this. You would not walk up to someone that you know or don't know and put your hands over their eyes or into their ears. It would be rude and quite surprising. So instead, when you're working with someone who is deafblind or when you're interacting with your child who is deafblind, make your hands available to them. And again, wait for them to reach out to you. Using the hand under hand strategy allows the child to engage or refuse in participating in an activity. Let's watch this video of Jarvis visiting the drum store. You will see his teacher standing behind him using hand under hand to hold drumsticks. They play the drum together and his teacher provides adequate wait time while also encouraging Jarvis to play the drum.
Different drum. Oh.
Singing over there? Yeah, go,
All right, Chuck.
go. Go. So don't worry.
I love that smile they show of Jarvis at the end. Well, almost at the end. He's having a great time. So I want to move on a little to talking a little bit about communication modalities. This is important as it's key to understand that everyone communicates. It may not be in the way that you expect, but watching your child for communicative behaviors is crucial. But even more so is that you respond consistently to their communication attempts. Some ways your child may communicate might be through body movements, facial expressions, breathing, gestures, objects, and more.
Whether we realize it or not, behavior is communication. Our job as teaching professionals and parents is to watch and see what our kiddos are doing and communicating. Not if they're communicating like we do, but watching for everything nonverbal as well. What we are recognizing and how does it actually translate to communication? Multimodal approach to communication is important and key to continue to build upon. My son, Andrew, slides in and out of different modalities to access different environments. I can remember the days when he'd hit his head because he couldn't get anything out verbally or by signing. We didn't know signs. We didn't know, right? I'm sure you all can identify. It was horrible seeing him go through that, and we felt helpless. We just could do nothing. That's where all of this started, a journey into who Andrew is and how we can reach him. How does Andrew communicate now? I kind of told you a little bit, but today he talks and he communicates all the time. He repeats himself over and over and over, and he repeats what we tell him as well. He often reminds us of all the rules, how many Buc-ee's there are in the United States. Definitely, this kid keeps life interesting and he keeps us moving forward. Suzanne?
So Parker is unilaterally aided with a cochlear implant on his left side. And prior to his implant, he had a Baha, and we decided at an early age to use total communication. He also had dysphagia and had a trach for 2 years as an infant. So we decided to learn sign language just because he was able to orally communicate. Then his hearing went down and it all went perfectly well together. So it's hard for him to speak orally, but he tries really hard to. Sometimes I use my voice because he tells me how excited he is that he can hear me with his implant. And I want to be able to support his desire to use his implant. Parker will also sometimes use his voice while signing. He'll bang on the table or the wall to get our attention, because when we do mapping at the Cochlear Implant Center, now he knows the difference between soft, loud, and he'll also write on his iPad and he'll show me in sentences what he wants, or his demands. And he'll draw his thoughts and emotions on the iPad. So he has multiple ways to receive information and express information. And I love how he interchanges the way he communicates depending on the person that he's with. That's pretty cool.
So moving on to the learning environment, it can either enhance or prevent access to information and social interaction for children and youth who are deafblind, and it can impact their attention and engagement. The physical structure is the foundation of the learning environment. And I always tell teachers, I should be able to walk into your room and know what happens in every area without you giving me any verbal cues. I should just know. This helps everyone, staff, students, classroom visitors, understand what activities are occurring in each area at any given time. It helps students anticipate the requirements of their setting and to predict what is happening. It minimizes competing distractions. And the results have been proven through research that we see more on-task behavior and academic achievement when these things are set up well.
I totally agree, Christy. The same way that Parker needs to have less visual clutter on paper for classwork applies to clutter on his desk. In the past years, Parker has had a cart with the technology and learning aids he's used in the classroom. the collection accumulated over the years. And it wasn't until a couple years ago someone showed me his cart, and there were items on the cart that weren't even applicable to his hearing and vision needs. Many of the A's he didn't need anymore because he had a touchscreen laptop and appropriate programs and platforms to access information. At one point, he had so many things on his desk, the teacher couldn't even see him because he was blocked by devices and apparatuses. Where he learns is critical, less distraction, thinking about glare from the windows and the sun, having items in his field of vision. Also, think of physically preparing the learning environment to ensure he's ready to learn. Parker has a footstool that he uses under his chair to provide input and improve posture, and he feels grounded. Parker also needs to have things accessible to him and to increase his ability to make choices and get them. He has to know where his iPad is, his laptop is, where his black markers are, where his reader stand is, and it's important to have Parker surrounded by appropriate peers on the same academic level, and he needs to be challenged. I would recommend having other staff, such as the TVI, PT, and OT, and other support staff like an intervener, collaborate together to ensure for better outcomes in the classroom.
That's great, Suzanne. Some other considerations for preparing the learning environment that you may not think about include how your child will navigate within the spaces of the classroom, how and when, or how and where they will be positioned, how materials will be presented, and how others will interact with and support your child.
So some considerations that we have taken into consideration for the IEP team to understand from the parent perspective what the child's vision and hearing loss is. That is paramount. We have really worked to make sure they understand what the thresholds of Andrew's hearing is with and without his BAHA or the hearing device. Understanding that, while they're aided, you don't need to scream at them. Just talk normal tone. Vision coming in from the side, as Christy said, proper etiquette. What is appropriate to approach the child, or how is it appropriate to approach the child with respect and abiding by the functional hearing and vision to allow our kids the ability to show what they know and allow them to demonstrate what they can do, then build on it. This is where it's at. Building on those things and using that information, translating it into the classroom, and the teachers and assistants to understand what this looks like. When this is functioning as intended, it's as though a blank, white, flat canvas blossoms into a beautiful painting with color, character, and the vision. It's so bright.
I love that, Jen. Whoops. So that's the end of our presentation for tonight. But what I wanted to point out and remind you of is that the IEP discussion guide, which is this first bullet on here, is a fantastic tool for you and the team to identify your child's needs. So all of these things that we've been talking about tonight, they are part of this discussion guide and can help you talk through them, help you identify different adaptations and accommodations and modifications that need to be made for your child's program. As you go through the sections of the guide, it will highlight these areas where the accommodations and modifications will be needed. I also wanted to point out that there are 2 pages of resources. And the second page includes the communication passport, which is Andrew's full example, and the template that Jen talked about, and also a link to the program CAMI that Suzanne talked about. So now I think we go on to questions and answers.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. Give me one moment because I'm going to spotlight all of us now just to make it a little easier. And Christy, are you all going to send us the those resources so we can put it on the website? I'm not sure if we have those already.
Yes. Yes, I'll
Okay,
send you
perfect.
the PowerPoint and the resources to make sure you have everything.
Great. Yep. So everyone can keep an eye out on the webinar tab on the Charge Syndrome Foundation website, which let me just go put that in here right now. So that should be up there within a week or so. Okay, so now is the time for our attendees to write some questions in the chat. We did have some questions come in ahead of time, so I'm going to go ahead and start by asking those while we wait for our live questions. Okay, so we got a couple questions asking about how you can really advocate for an intervener if you're in a state that doesn't recognize that, or if a school team is telling you, no, we don't do that, or no, we would not allow an intervener to be with your child all day. I know, Suzanne, you had already mentioned that a little bit about that you had to do this within your district, but I'm curious if you all could talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of that process.
Oh, nitty-gritty is a great term for that process. I just want to start off by saying that there are very few states that truly recognize intervener as a position. There are other states that use different terms. So sometimes, I mean, I've heard even the word Brailleist used so they could get an intervener. I don't know how that happened. But there are a number of different states who do recognize interveners, but many don't. So I just wanted to start off by saying that. And Suzanne, if you have any, I'm looking for a web page right now that I want to share with you all that gives you just a little bit of information about some success stories that states have had in moving intervener services forward. The thing I want to tell you all, though, first and foremost, and this is not to put pressure on you as parents or as families, but the only way this work has moved forward is by advocacy from parents. So I'm going to put the website here in the link. There you go.
Christy, I can speak to kind of where we are in our process for Andrew. So in North Carolina, it is recognized, interveners are recognized, but we have an interpreter. What I have done over these years is I have written the function of an intervener in the IEP on how Andrew needs access to the environment and the curriculum, and just how I kind of spoke about that a little bit, how the teacher and the interpreter work together and their functions. It actually comes right from the definition. And so the functionality, I feel, is very important. If you don't have, if your state doesn't recognize an intervener, the term. So I would say definitely start there and focus on the function.
I can add to that, Jen. So unfortunately, New York State does not recognize interveners, and I know that it was just something that he needed, and I knew advocating for that could possibly have him not able to go to the school. But it was something that I knew that he was entitled to, and it just worked. When we found that position, it just clicked in our brain that we have to fight for this position. There are other states that have it. Like, I was even considering moving to other states that had interveners recognized. Um, but I think really showing and explaining what the position and the roles and responsibilities of that specific position and how it connects with that child and how his disability is the disability of access, they totally understood. And it came to the point where we're like, okay, let's look at your drop down box. What can we put down that would fit in the box? Because sometimes you have to think outside of the box. So I know in other, schools and entities in New York State, we've had, para with deafblind training. We've had interpreters take the AHOA modules, which is the online modules, to get deafblind training. And then I've used that family guide to interveners, which is like my Bible. I had it when Parker was 2, and I went to my first workshop for the deafblind project. And we used the intervener.org a lot, and I totally download all the national, the NCDB stuff. But I think just having information, the worst they could say is no, but if you can have papers and packets and information and videos explaining how it is effective, that really will open their mind to exploring the option of, how can we make this work and what type of position can we put in until interveners are recognized in our state.
And this is Christy. The other thing I wanted to say is organizations like NFADB and, different parent organizations do a lot of advocacy. And so partnering with them and seeing, how you can contribute to that advocacy is another way, because this is not just a single district issue. It's a state and nationwide issue that we have been trying to work through for many, many years.
Thanks so much for your answers, everyone. Those are really helpful. I did put in some of the links that our presenters were just talking about. I didn't catch all of them, but because there's so much good information, but a lot of those links will be in the chat. Okay, we've got some live questions from our attendees. Thanks everyone for asking some great questions. One of our attendees is asking, Suzanne, with the stool example, how was that accommodation identified? Besides recommendations from our current providers, what are good tools for finding accommodations to try out? Great question.
Okay, the stool, I think it was just so drilled into everybody's brain when I was advocating for intervener, and the district rep kept saying, stop saying intervener, there's no such thing. And then just years later, we caught her saying intervener in all of our IPs. So it was so cool. But for the stool, we have a great team of therapists, and it's totally transdisciplinary. And on our IEP, we have down that the intervener, has to work with all the related service providers. So he, pushes in, he gives great information. And whenever something works for one therapist, they give suggestions to the other. And the PT just recommended this stool and, invited the team to come and observe. And it worked amazingly. Can you imagine if you're fidgeting? I mean, my son, he could focus on one thing and he will not stop anything else. It's like, peripheral is gone. So the stool really grounded him and made him more upright. And it made him pay attention more. It made him participate more. So I can probably look for the link and send it to you somehow. It basically goes, the chair goes into the stool. So it's positioned together. And then we've also played around with different stools, because there's some kids use like a rubber band and they like to move their feet. Parker's feet like to be just grounded. Even and even when he's home, we have one for his chair in his bedroom.
Awesome, thank you. A couple of questions kind of go together. Do you all have a list of states that recognize interveners? And can you talk about any steps that are currently being taken to getting interveners recognized in more states?
Well, that is great. Those are great questions that we're going to address in 2 weeks. So I don't want to share too much, but I do want to say this. Interveners are not a dime a dozen. We do not have this great, wonderful list of all these people that you can call or email and say, hey, do you need a job? Or, can you, we don't have that because we just don't have tons of people who are trained. And so when we say interveners are important, you may have to start with a paraeducator who's willing, well, first of all, who has passion to work with your child. And then secondly, who's willing to do training. And however that training looks, high quality training is super important. But that doesn't mean there's one way to do high quality training. So yes, I have well, I don't know if it's necessarily a list so much as it is, I've talked to our state deafblind projects and said, hey, tell me, what your state's doing. And so I'll be sharing that information next week. Or
Y'all are
in,
getting,
sorry, in 2 weeks, not next
Yeah.
week.
Yep. Yeah, great questions. More reason to keep on coming to these presentations. A couple more questions we can probably get to. Someone is asking, so an intervener is not part of the school system. I'm in California and I am not familiar with the intervener term. However, from what I'm hearing about an intervener, it sounds like an equivalent to my son's one-on-one aide. Would that be considered an intervener? Or is an intervener like a privately hired support person?
So this is Christy, and an intervener is someone who's hired through the school system. And some people do call them a one-on-one aide. That's just what they call them because their state doesn't have a designation for intervener. In California, you do have a training program at San Francisco State that trains interveners. You also have your state deafblind project, who is fantastic. But what I would say is we don't use the actual term intervener until someone has gone through high quality training and really learned intervener strategies, deafblindness, how to work with the child who has a combined vision and hearing loss. So just anyone that is hired that works with a child who's deafblind wouldn't necessarily be called an intervener unless they've gone through training.
All right, thank you. How can we add training in deafblindness into the IEP?
This is Jen. I can take that question. So what I have struggled with every year with every IEP team is making sure that they understand, first of all, what deafblindness is, and then secondly, how to reach and teach, right? So that is actually an action step that I have added to our IEP. Of course, we know it has to be a team decision. We have to agree. So I try to be very reasonable. I try to be sensible, but I feel for my son, it is necessary for them to understand him. And so I have requested every quarter the teacher and the assistants, as well as the interpreter intervener, to actually do a certain number of hours of continuing ed. I think I have it like at an hour a quarter for each one of them. So it's not like it's labor intensive. It really is just keeping them grounded in what is going on with Andrew, and they can attend those usually for free. And I send those resources a lot of times, like, hey, this would be like this webinar. This would be a great webinar for you to listen to.
I'll add to that. I have on the IEP, it's on like the last page. But similar to Jen, it could look training deafblindness in many ways. Like I bombard his school and his educational team on like this webinar, all the webinars that I get our fingertips, explain that they're free, they're taped, and they just want to learn more. And if you don't, I think just by asking, they're just so open to learning because again, it's such a topic that not a lot of educators know about. So I think the fact that to connect them with the Deafblind Project and to have somebody come in, and even if it's something like Jen said, an hour training, or they could even watch this webinar and do a Q&A with like somebody from your state deafblind project. I've come in and done just how the deafblindness affects Parker, and then that craves them to want more, and they could take it at their own pace because a lot of the times all these webinars they offer credits which educators need anyway, so it's like a win-win situation.
All right, I'm just going through and copying all the questions we have in the chat because they're questions that are going to be really good for the presentation in a couple weeks. So on May 14th, we're going to be coming back together with our presenters at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they will be speaking to us about the nuts and bolts of interveners. So learning more about what is an intervener, how does an intervener differ from other roles such as a paraprofessional or an interpreter, and how to go through the logistical steps of getting an intervener and working with them. So with that, thank you to our presenters for sharing your expertise tonight. Thank you for our interpreters for doing a wonderful job, as always, in communicating our information. And thank you to everyone for attending tonight. So we'll see you all back here in 2 weeks. All right. Bye, everyone.